I arrived 10 minutes early. Habit, I suppose. The parking lot was already half full, but I found a spot near the back entrance. My hands trembled a little as I adjusted the collar on my blazer. It was the one Margaret bought me for our anniversary, 3 years before she passed. Jacob had always said it made me look presidential. Funny how compliments fade quicker than betrayal. The venue was stunning. I'd written the check myself, $50,000, paid in full. No questions asked. My son said it would be easier if I stayed out of the planning. I assumed that meant he was busy, not that I was unwelcome. I walked toward the seating area with a small white envelope in my coat pocket. My gift. Inside was a letter, personal, handwritten, and a certified bond worth $10,000, just something to help them start. But when I reached the aisle, I paused. Every chair had a name. I scanned the rows once, then again. I turned to one of the ushers. "Excuse me, I don't see my seat. Richard Martin." He hesitated. "Oh, let me check." Before he could turn, Claire appeared. My daughter-in-law in white lace and a smile so tight it looked stapled on. "Oh, Richard," she said, voice bright and hollow. "Yes, about the seating. We had to cut a few last minute. There just wasn't room." I blinked. "No room." "You can stand in the back. It'll only be 20 minutes. Besides, you've got a great view from there." I looked past her. Jacob was laughing with the photographer. He caught my eye and then looked away. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. Don't assume blood guarantees belonging. I stood through the entire ceremony. No one offered their seat. No one made space. My knees ached by minute 12, but I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I watched my son promise forever, knowing he hadn't offered me a single moment today. The officiant asked, "Who gives their blessing to this union?" Claire's parents rose together, arms linked. I stood alone in the back, the man who paid for the candles, the music, the open bar, and was now furniture. There was no mention of Margaret. No nod to the woman who raised Jacob, who made him peanut butter sandwiches with the crusts cut off, who walked him to school when I worked double shifts. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in applause. I didn't clap. After the recessional, I slipped out quietly, unnoticed. The cold hit me as soon as I stepped outside, sharp and honest. I stood by the valet booth, my envelope still in my pocket. I looked back once. I remembered every dollar I'd spent on that building, every inch of flooring, every stained glass panel, every hour I worked to pay for it. They hadn't forgotten me. They erased me. I sat on the bench just beyond the reception tent, the sound of clinking glasses and forced laughter bleeding through the air like a wound that wouldn't close. The music was cheerful. People were dancing. Meanwhile, I stared down at the tips of my shoes, polished just enough to reflect the ache in my chest. $50,000, that's what I gave them, quietly. No strings, no speeches, just a father helping his son begin a new life. I didn't need a spotlight, I never did, but I never imagined being erased completely. A shadow crossed over me. I looked up to see Ben, my nephew. 19, maybe 20, thin as a rake and always too honest. "Uncle Richard," he said, grinning. "Man, this whole thing is amazing. I didn't know Claire's dad had that kind of money." I blinked. "What?" Ben laughed. "I mean this place, the open bar, the string quartet. Claire's dad really went all out, huh?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. The words hung there, dry and useless. He looked confused. "Wait, didn't he pay for it?" "No," I said quietly, "he didn't." Ben looked away awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "Oh, sorry. That's just what they said. Claire made a whole toast about her dad's generosity before the ceremony, said he made the dream come true." I nodded once. "Enjoy the party, Ben." He left in a hurry. I stayed on the bench, cold glass of untouched punch in my hand, and watched as servers passed by with plates I hadn't been offered. I could still hear her voice from the ceremony. There just wasn't room. Later that evening, I found Jacob near the fire pit. His tie was loose, hair ruffled, glass in hand. He looked too young to be married and too smug to know the weight of anything real. "Can I talk to you?" I asked. He looked up. "Dad, hey, you having fun?" "I'm fine, I just spoke to Ben." Jacob chuckled. "Ah, yeah, kid talks too much. He said you told people Claire's father paid for the wedding." Jacob looked around, then shrugged. "It's just easier that way." I didn't move. "Easier?" "Yeah, you know how Claire is about appearances. Her family's always been about status. She didn't want questions. And I was a question." He looked down, swirled his drink. "It's not personal, just optics." I nodded slowly. "You're right, it's not personal." Then I turned and walked away before the tremble in my jaw gave me away. I didn't go back inside. I didn't wait for dessert. Something had broken. And it wasn't just pride. It was the part of me that still believed I was wanted. I was assigned to table 12. Not with Jacob, not with family, but tucked in the corner of the reception hall between an elderly couple from Claire's side and a teenager who spent the whole evening scrolling on his phone. I checked the place card twice, thinking maybe it was a mistake. It was. The room glowed with warm chandeliers, champagne flowed, and laughter bounced off the walls. Every table near the dance floor had familiar faces: Jacob's college friends, Claire's extended family, neighbors I hadn't seen since Margaret's funeral. But me? I sat with strangers. I might as well have worn a name tag that said donor, not dad. A server passed by. Everyone at my table had already been served. I raised a hand gently. "Excuse me, I believe my plate was missed." She offered a tight smile. "I'll check." 20 minutes later, cold chicken and undercooked carrots were placed in front of me without a word. I stared at the food like it belonged to someone else. When Jacob tapped a spoon against his glass, I straightened. Finally, I thought, a toast. Maybe he'd say something, anything. "I want to thank everyone who made this possible," he began, his voice confident. "Especially Claire's parents, who went above and beyond to bring this dream to life." Applause followed. Claire's father stood and waved modestly. My hands clenched under the table. I didn't want the spotlight, but to not even exist, that did something to a man. It didn't just hurt, it erased. Later, I stood near the cake, waiting for a quiet moment. I walked up to the mic and cleared my throat. "Hi, everyone, I just—" Claire was by my side in an instant, her smile frozen. "Let's keep things moving," she whispered into the mic. "We're a bit behind on the dances." I stepped back. No one said a word. No one stopped her. A photographer passed by, camera in hand. I tried to meet his eyes. He turned and snapped a shot of Claire with her bridesmaids. Never once was I asked for a photo, not with Jacob, not with the cake, not even alone. By the time dessert was served, my face had hardened into something unrecognizable. I kept smiling, but it was no longer mine. I slipped out just after the bouquet toss. The night air slapped me awake. As I walked to my car, I looked back once. Inside, they danced. They toasted. They clinked glasses over a future built on my silence. That's when the thought came, not like a spark, but a cold, quiet echo. If they wouldn't make space for me in their story, I'd write one without them. The office smelled like dust and memory. Alina opened the door before I even knocked twice. "Richard," she said, her voice warm and firm. "I was hoping I'd see you before the year ended. Come in." I stepped into her home office. Same mahogany bookshelves, same brass lamp that buzzed faintly when it got too warm. It had been years since I last sat in that leather chair across from her desk. "I need your help," I said quietly. She didn't hesitate. "Tell me everything." I pulled the letter from my coat. "This is a copy of the trust we wrote up, the one I signed after Margaret passed." She took it, adjusted her glasses, and scanned the document. $3.5 million, divided in full to Jacob upon your death. You said you wanted it simple back then. I did, I hesitated. I thought he'd earned it. I thought I was building something he'd carry forward. Eleanor met my eyes. What changed? He did. I told her everything, the wedding, the seating, the fact that I was erased while paying for everything. And then I told her what Claire said, there wasn't room. I told her about Jacob calling my contribution an optics issue. She didn't take notes. She didn't need to. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a thin red folder. This came in last month, she said, flipping it open. Jacob and Claire submitted a request to reassign trustee power, early disbursement. They claimed cognitive instability. I stared at her. What? They said you'd been showing signs of memory loss, that you were having trouble managing finances. My last physical showed no decline, I said. No diagnosis, nothing. Eleanor's jaw tightened. They didn't submit medical records, just a typed affidavit signed by Claire. And you didn't approve it. She gave me a sharp look. Richard, I knew you 30 years before that girl ever learned how to spell affidavit. Of course I didn't approve it, but they were preparing to take it further. My throat dried. He's trying to steal it. She nodded slowly. He's not stealing it, Richard. He's expecting it, because you taught him to expect without effort. I leaned back in the chair. The ceiling fan above me hummed gently, the blades spinning like time slipping past. I want to rewrite it, I said. I want him out. Then we'll do it, but not out of rage. We do this right, with records, with process, with precision. She narrowed her eyes. We don't burn the house down, Richard. We quietly sell it from under them. I exhaled, the tension curling at the edges of my ribs. Then let's begin. Eleanor smiled. Let's give them something they didn't plan for, consequences. The message came late, sometime past midnight. I didn't notice it until the morning, when the sun hit my blinds and the light cut straight across my eyes. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, the red notification dot still blinking from hours earlier. One new voicemail. I pressed play. Claire's voice spilled out, sharp and unguarded. Hey babe, I talked to the lawyer, not the old one, the new one. She says the paperwork should go through once your dad's condition is confirmed. God, I can't wait. Once the money in our hands, we can finally stop pretending. The man's barely all there anymore. It's cruel, honestly, keeping him responsible for that much. I sat there frozen, phone against my ear, heart pounding in my throat. Once the money in our hands. I replayed it, then again. Each time it hit differently. The first time it was shock, the kind that steals your breath and leaves your palms slick. The second time it was anger, not loud or wild, but cold, measured, almost surgical. The third time it was grief. The kind that doesn't make noise. The kind that just settles in your bones and stays. She thought I wouldn't hear it. She meant to send it to Jacob. But instead, she'd handed me everything I needed. I played the end again, her voice dripping with disdain. Honestly, he's lucky he's still living there rent-free. Once this all clears, I want that house redone, no trace of him left. Fresh start. No trace of him left. That line hit the hardest. I set the phone down on the table, staring at it like it was a weapon I didn't know how to use yet. Then I opened my laptop. I transferred the voicemail, backed it up, twice. Once to an external drive, once to cloud storage. When I finished, I called Eleanor. Something came in, I said quietly. From Jacob. Worse, I replied. His wife, a mistake I think, but one that speaks volumes. She exhaled slowly. Play it for me when you come in. We'll transcribe it, file it, and notarize the copy. Evidence plain and clean. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I'm done grieving, Eleanor. Good, she said. Now we start documenting. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The clock ticked steadily beside me. each second a reminder that time hadn't stopped, only my patience had. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, took a sip, and let it cool between my hands. They'd mistaken silence for weakness. But silence, when wielded carefully, could be sharper than anything they'd ever imagined. I pressed play one last time, not to listen but to remember. That voicemail wasn't just proof of betrayal. It was the moment my revenge became evidence. Elena spread the folders across her desk like a general preparing for war. She adjusted her glasses, pen in hand. "We're not destroying the trust," she said calmly. "We're repurposing it, redirecting it with intention, with clarity." I nodded, fingers curled around the edge of my chair. "No revenge clauses, no punishments," she continued. "Just the removal of assumption. Jacob and Claire believed they were owed something. We're going to prove they never earned it." We worked for hours. She asked me to list what I cared about most. "Adult learners," I said. "People who went back to school after life beat them down." She wrote it down. "Good scholarship endowment, annual distribution." "Senior veterans," I added. "Housing support, dignity in their final stretch." She nodded. "I know a foundation that'll match your gift if we root it properly." And I hesitated. There was a nurse, a young man, Malik, when I was in the hospital last spring. He sat with me one night when I couldn't breathe. Never once looked at the clock. He didn't even know who I was. "Anonymous gift?" she asked. "Yes, let him wake up one day and find out someone remembered." We moved through the documents section by section, every clause rewritten, every disbursement reallocated. Jacob's name, once etched so boldly, was now scratched out with surgical finality. Claire had never even been listed. At the end, Elena slid a sheet toward me. "I drafted the letter," she said, "the one to be read after you're gone." I read it in silence. "If you're reading this, it means I've taken my final breath. I did not die bitter. I died corrected. I am not leaving behind wealth. I am leaving behind my name, and I am taking it with me. Legacy is not inheritance. It is choice. And this time I chose who remembered me. Not because of blood, but because of grace." My eyes didn't water. Not exactly. But I felt something settle, like dust finally landing on a shelf after years of hanging in the air. I signed every page with a steady hand, each signature louder than 1,000 arguments. Elena closed the final folder and sealed it with a ribbon. "It's done." I stood to leave but paused at the door. "They'll be furious," I said. "They'll be confused," she replied. "They thought you'd go quietly." I looked back at her. That small office now the place where I'd taken back every piece of myself they'd tried to erase. "I didn't go quietly," I said. "I just stopped speaking to people who weren't listening." Outside, the wind was soft, and for once it didn't sting. I began coughing a few weeks before the lunch. Not a real cough, just enough to raise concern. Skipped a few church services. Let the rumors breathe. Claire was the first to ask. "Is everything all right?" she said one Sunday, feigning worry with that tight, brittle smile. "I'm slowing down," I replied, patting her hand. "Thought I'd gather everyone, just in case it's my last." Her eyes glimmered, not with sadness but with readiness, like a wolf politely wiping its paws before the feast. I made the calls myself, invited the whole family to a Sunday lunch at the same country inn Jacob loved as a boy, said I wanted one more afternoon together. No occasion, no ceremony. They all came. Claire wore cream, pearls at her throat. Jacob arrived late, as always, with his shirt half-tucked and his smile apologetic. The table was long, heavy, too formal for the occasion. I insisted on no waitstaff, just trays of food and a pitcher of sweet tea in the center. We laughed, or rather they laughed. I stayed quiet, letting the room swell with warmth, letting them believe this was my surrender. When dessert came, pecan pie, Margaret's favorite, I stood slowly and pulled a letter from my coat pocket. Before we eat, I said, I'd like to say something. Chairs shifted, Claire straightened. I unfolded the page. No one noticed the wax seal Alina had taught me to use. Thank you for being here. I've thought a lot about legacy, what we leave and to whom. I've rewritten my estate. The $3.5 million trust will no longer pass through bloodlines. Instead, it will flow where dignity still lives. Scholarships for adult learners who believed in second chances. Housing for veterans who carried burdens heavier than mine. And a final, anonymous gift for someone who once held my hand when no one else would. I paused, looked around the table. Claire's smile had vanished. Her hands were stiff around the fork. To my family, you were never cut out because of mistakes. You were cut out because you forgot I existed. Legacy is not a birthright. It's a responsibility, and you let go of mine long before I let go of you. I folded the letter, sat down, picked up my fork. Jacob said nothing. His mouth opened, then closed. Claire's eyes darted to him, to me, to the pie like she could still taste something sweet in it. No one spoke. The silence that followed was thick and golden, not awkward, earned, the kind of silence that doesn't ask for forgiveness. I took a bite of pie. It was perfect. And for the first time in years, so was the quiet. The first letter came on a Thursday. No return address, just neat handwriting and a pale blue envelope. I opened it over my morning coffee, not expecting much. Inside was a photo of a young woman in scrubs, standing in front of a brick building that read St. Jude's School of Nursing. The letter began, Dear Mr. Martin, you won't remember me, but I served you tea once at the hospital cafeteria. You smiled at me when no one else did. When the grant came, I cried for an hour. I thought it was a mistake, but the letter said because someone saw you. I just wanted to say thank you. I set the letter down and exhaled, letting it land where nothing else could. By Monday, the town paper had run the headline, Elder betrayed by family fund scholarships instead. They interviewed Alina for the piece. She declined to share exact figures, but confirmed that over a dozen grants had been awarded, all in my name, all from a redirected trust fund originally designated for family beneficiaries. They printed a quote from me. Legacy should reflect who we are, not just who shares our name. By Wednesday, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. The community center downtown left a message saying their new reading wing would bear my name. The Martin Room, a place for second chances. A reporter from a larger outlet called, asking if I'd be willing to comment on what they were calling the quiet revolution of inheritance. I declined. But Jacob didn't. Claire was the first to break. She called Alina's office, demanded a meeting, said there had been a misunderstanding and that they were entitled to clarification. Alina sent a single-page response. I saw the draft. All changes to Mr. Martin's trust were made within legal boundaries, with medical documentation verifying full cognitive capacity and with notarized oversight. No amendments are reversible. They tried to file a grievance, claimed emotional distress, character defamation, breach of trust. It never even made it past intake. The paperwork was clean, the signatures tight. The law didn't need to punish them. It simply ignored them. A week later, I saw Claire at the grocery store. She pretended not to see me. Her eyes scanned the produce like it could save her. Her hands trembled when she dropped a bag of onions into the cart. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. Outside, I saw someone reading the paper in their car, the headline folded across their steering wheel. I watched them smile. And that's when it hit me, not revenge. Erasure. But this time, it wasn't mine. It was theirs. I packed the box myself. Small, wooden, no ribbon. Just polished walnut and brass hinges, the kind of thing meant to hold heirlooms, not reminders. Inside, I placed 3 items. The first was a copy of the original trust, the one where Jacob's name appeared in bold. Full beneficiary status right beneath the words upon my passing. I'd scratched it out with a black fountain pen. One clean line, not angry, not messy, just final. The second was a printed donation receipt. 4 pages, single-spaced. Each line detailed a contribution in my name, scholarships, grants, housing endowments, and anonymous gifts. The total, $3.5 million disbursed. The third was a card, handwritten. My penmanship hadn't changed in 50 years. Jacob and Claire. You were right. There was no room for me at the wedding. So I made room somewhere else. No anger, just clarity. Dad. I didn't sign my full name, just Dad, because that's what still stung that I once believed I'd always be one. I mailed it with a return receipt, no note on the package, no warning. A week passed, then 10 days. Then I heard it through Alina. Jacob and Claire had listed their apartment for sale. The listing was ambitious, ocean view, inflated asking price. Claire had bragged on social media about finally moving up. But the mortgage paperwork hit a snag. The lender flagged their financial plan. Under anticipated inheritance, Jacob had written, $3.05 M, secured trust beneficiary. They didn't know the banks verify that now. Claire's father called Alina's office in a panic, said there must be a mistake, asked if the trust had really been revoked. She answered with one word, irrevocably. They lost the buyer. The mortgage extension expired. The bank flagged their account for misrepresentation. I didn't gloat, I didn't smile. But I did sit quietly by the fireplace that night, watching the logs burn down to soft red embers, and felt something I hadn't in years. Not joy, not even justice. Just balance. The next morning I received a message from an unknown number. One line. You didn't have to do this. I deleted it. I didn't need to respond. Because I did have to do it. Not to punish them, but to remind myself that silence is not weakness, and some gifts aren't wrapped in ribbons, but in consequences. The check cleared on a Monday. Alina called just to confirm. It's official, she said. Everything's disbursed. I didn't say much, just nodded, even though she couldn't see it. My hand stayed in my coat pockets as I stood outside the post office, the crisp edge of autumn cutting across my face like a clean truth. The same day, Raphael closed on a 2-bedroom house for his grandmother, paid in full. No mortgage, just keys and sunlight and something that finally felt stable. The scholarship fund launched the next morning. Adult learners, single mothers, veterans, laid-off machinists going back for their GEDs, all eligible. The applications poured in before the press release even went live. But what broke me was the plaque. I didn't ask for it, didn't even know it was being made. The Grace Holloway Suite. The elder care wing at the community hospital, renamed for Margaret, not me. I walked through it one afternoon. No announcement, no grand opening, just quiet hallways, polished floors, and soft voices behind curtains. A nurse passed me in the corridor, nodded. Another offered me a gentle smile. You visiting? No, I said, just walking. One older woman in a recliner near the window looked up as I passed. Her hair was silver, her hands curled gently in her lap. Are you the man who gave this? She asked. I paused, something like that. She smiled, it's beautiful. It was. That night I got a card in the mail. No flowers, no money, just a simple envelope, the handwriting familiar in a way that made me pause. It was from Raphael. Thank you for reminding me what it means to be seen. My grandmother says this is the first time she's felt safe in decades. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to serve. I won't forget who gave me the room to try. I placed the card next to Margaret's photo on the mantel. She was smiling in it, the real kind, the kind that reached her eyes. Jacob never called again, neither did Claire. And for the first time in years, I didn't need them to. Because the final receipt hadn't been money, or applause, or even a plaque. It was peace, measured not in inheritance, but in memory.